Salam, good morning. This is Mohammad Moin Rehman of ITN Islamic Television Network. I'm going to start with a phrase that we are used to listening from senators, from congressmen, and I hate to say it, from journalists who aid and abet this phrase and use it on a daily basis. It's called anti-Semitic. There has to be clarification of what exactly anti-Semitic is. Because from the perspective of all these journalists at CNN, Fox, especially, unfortunately, the team of President Biden, anti-Semitic is anything that you say against Israel. It shouldn't be that way. There are a lot of people who do not agree with the policies in the United States. We see that debate every day about economy, about immigration, about so many things that the Democratic government of President Biden does, and the Republicans don't agree with it. There are a lot of things in a separate country. Israel is a separate sovereign country. It has its own prime minister. It has its own Senate, Knesset, or whatever you want to call it. And there are moments that you can disagree. Like, for example, what is happening in Palestine today. 35 to 40,000 people have been murdered in the name of a war which the world knows is one-sided. There is no war which is one-sided. A war is there when two sides conflict, like Russia and Ukraine, like India or Pakistan, like China or Taiwan, like the Second World War. How is this a war when 23,000 sorties of bombing are carried out in a 23-mile zone of Gaza with no anti-aircraft guns even being fired? We call this a war. United States is aiding and abetting the war. This is a carnage, a Holocaust number 2. So coming back to the anti-Semitic thing, you say anything against Israel is anti-Semitic. You cannot. It does not fall under First or Second Amendment. You do not have the right to say anything. Because those people in the last 40 or 50 years, some of them, like I was witnessing Manu Raju at CNN today, and he was talking to a congressman who blatantly said, I am with Israel all the way. Whether they rape the mothers and daughters of Muslim men and women, they commit carnage, he's with them. It doesn't matter if the own Jewish people are saying or calling Netanyahu as the crime minister. He is the crime minister, a modern time Himmler. Unfortunately, the Muslims, please note, are not against people of Judaic faith. They are our former fathers. They are our present brothers. We love their children just as we do ours. They grow up together in the United States of America in the same primary, kindergarten, middle school, and high schools. They are no different than our kids. There is no hatred for the Jewish people. What was anti-Semitic was what happened in Germany, what Hitler did, because they rounded up anyone who was Jewish, put a number on their hands, engraved, put this thing. They took over their homes, they took over their belongings, they took them to by trains or whatever means, mostly trains, with music, arrival at the stations, lodged them in barracks, separated the old and weak, women and children who were of no use to them, and then took them to the showers of gas. That was mass murder and anti-Semitic. It is not anti-Semitic when a protest is taken out by people angry at their mothers, sisters, and daughters being raped. 15,000 plus women have been raped by IDF in the name of war. How are we okay? How do we go to the Wailing Wall and pray with the image of women and children being slaughtered? We're okay. The conquerors The prime ministers, the presidents will come and go. Nobody lasts forever. But there is one power that the Judaic, Christian, and Muslim people feel and know will last forever. That is the kingdom of God. We are answerable to Him. Because all three of these faiths believe that one day we will meet the Maker. What are we going to say then? That we knew that this carnage was being done, that we blatantly are calling an entire nation terrorists? For example, in a protest in New York, this lady was angry, visibly very angry. She was Palestinian. And they had some guys wrapped up in Israeli flag in the middle of an angry protest to make the situation even worse, to antagonize those protesters. And do you know what? Jesse Waters of Fox News had it recorded. So he could present to the people, to the decent people of United States, the most decent people, the most faith-loving people live as citizens of United States. That is the reason we are here. It's not only for dollars that people come to United States, because it is the only country where freedom. Remember the national anthem of United States? The flag was still there. The flag will always remain there. The patriots showed that when they defeated the army of Britain. The sun never set for the British Empire. Remember? And then it sank forever. So coming back to anti-Semitism, please, I'm begging the journalists of the two mainstream media to not target Muslims and everything as anti-Semitism. It is not. It is not a war between the Muslims and the Judaic faith. People do not hate the Judaic people. Do not represent it that way to get votes or sympathy or create a situation such anti-inflammatory. Please believe in interfaith. There are forces that have done wrong to the United States that have been Muslims, that have also been Jews in the 50s. Who were the people who stole the secrets of United States? Why is it that a country with 94% Christians cannot say Merry Christmas anymore? It's Happy Holidays. Really? The most blessed time of the year is Christmas. The world enjoys it and celebrates the coming of the greatest soul on earth, a soul which had the power to speak as an infant, which was as pure, more pure than anything that we have known on earth. We all know what the world did to that soul. And we all know those who did it, what eventually happened to the great Roman Empire. It wasn't Cleopatra, it wasn't Brutus, it wasn't Caesar, it was faith. There is always a payment, which sometimes takes centuries, but it's coming. We Americans are the number one country in the world today. Maybe it will remain like that for another few hundred years. But times change. Things change. Nostradamus saw it coming. His predictions are there. Most of them came true. The change will come. Someday we will not remain on the top. Today we have weapons. In 1945, we were the only one with those weapons. Remember Oppenheimer? And even though Oppenheimer, we saw the movie, and if somebody didn't, I would like you to see it as to what we did with Oppenheimer. When he regretted as to the destruction caused by the atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he was told, actually, President Truman told his assistant, "Get this guy out of my room. Get this guy out of my room." The man who gave us those weapons. Get this guy out of my room. I'm going to take a few minutes time to relate a story. There was this columnist, and his name was Bookward, Art Bookward. He was a columnist. I think he wrote for the Washington Post or he wrote for New York Times. I don't remember exactly, but I used to read his columns. And then after that, Robert Frisk. They were both Jewish. But like others, so many others who have contributed so much to this world, not just United States, the world, contributed by Jewish people in the name of art, music, medicine, law, real estate, banking, so many others factors. This man was an award-winning columnist. One day he wrote an article. The name of the article was "In Front of the White House." In that article, he said, I was a homeless person begging in Los Angeles. The winter came. There were no tourists, none. It was difficult to survive day to day because most of the homeless people, unfortunately, a lot of them veterans who have given their lives and souls for this country, are homeless today. But coming back to this column, so I met another homeless guy who was heading to Washington, D.C. And he told me, go to Washington, D.C. And I asked him why. And he said, the White House is there. The tourists from Japan, from Asia, from Europe, they come there every day. The diplomats, the lot of employees in the White House, everybody comes to the White House. And if you are there with a sign, because in the United States, people usually have a sign. They don't come knocking at the windows of the car and asking, as it happens in Asia or maybe other countries. You just stand there with a sign and you at least you'll get a meal. So it makes sense. I decided to go to the White House. So I hitchhiked my way. I got into the train. I walked. I did whatever I could. I got to Washington, D.C. And in the next morning, I got to the White House at the main gate. I was standing there with the sign. Suddenly the gates opened and a limo came out, stopped. The guy pulled down the window and gave me a $100 bill. That was amazing. I had not seen a $100 bill for years on end. I was shocked. Positively shocked, of course. I have not had a decent meal. So I decided to take the day off. I went to a restaurant, had a couple of beers, had a steak, spent like $83. Then I was walking in an alley and I said, I'm just gonna stay behind the White House. So I went to the back alley of the White House and I was just gonna sleep there. I was a little drunk because the next morning I was gonna head to the front of the White House and I knew that the $100 bills will keep coming. Suddenly a car came with 4 guys wearing ski masks. They got out of the car. They beat me up. I was bleeding. In that scuffle, and by the way, they took the $17 I had left change in my pocket. They took it away. In that scuffle, one of the masks came into my hand. And I was shocked to see it was the same guy who gave me the $100 bill in the morning. So I said, listen, you beat me up, I'm bleeding, I was in a good mood, and now I'm suffering. And you're the guy that gave me the $100 bill. I recognize you because I recognize your face because I had never received $100 in my life. You know what the guy said? And this is Art Bookward writing in the column. He said, son, that was in front of the White House. This is behind the White House. The moral of the story that Art Bookward was trying to tell us, which unfortunately doesn't only apply to USA, but it does apply to USA also, that what the government does in the front, at the United Nations, at NATO, at going to meet Putin, at meeting Kim Jong-un, at the meeting with President Xi, while attending meeting in the gold palaces of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Netanyahu, and so many places is a front. There is no honesty. And what they do behind the White House, sometimes we see in different countries. When elected governments are taken out because a diplomat, Donald Lu, tells an ambassador of a country, "Oh, you have to take this prime minister out. We don't want him. Otherwise, all wrath is going to fall on you." So suddenly all the chips fall into place. That prime minister is taken out and put in prison. And the world is okay with that. Hey, last year, the Israeli soldiers entered the Mosque of Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. While people were praying during Ramadan, they entered the mosque with the full boots and battle gear and used the butts of their weapons to hit old, even 80-year-old people. Has that ever happened in any Muslim countries or even European countries or any country in the United States? The soldiers enter in full battle gear, a mosque, beat the worshippers, and all these people, these highly paid journalists, Gutfeld, Jake Tapper, Wolf Blitzer, Situation Room, nobody said boo. Nobody said anything. But if a Hamas woman in this protest, which I was talking about, where this guy with a microphone was there with an Israeli flag draped around him, says, "I am Hamas," and he's there, his whole mission with a microphone is to antagonize those people, is called a terrorist. Why? Do we know the history of Hamas? I hate terrorists. I have come on TV and condemned ISIS. They were the greatest crisis on earth. An act of terror can never be justified. And those 600-800 people from the Hamas who committed whatever they did should have been brought to justice. But that justice could have been aimed and targeted at them, like we did with Ayman al-Zawahiri, like President Obama took out Osama bin Laden. You do it with some planning. There was no planning. Even when we left Afghanistan, there was no planning. We couldn't even calculate when the Taliban are going to get to Kabul. What was the end result? Our soldiers, men and women, 18, 20-year-old kids who had their entire lives in front of them, their bodies were flying all over and they were killed in that exit, which President Biden so meticulously planned. The world and United States will not forgive or forget. It was not under the watch of President Donald J. Trump. If it had been that way, this thing would not have happened, because the authority that President Donald J. Trump brings is unparalleled. He's a patriot, he's an American citizen, and he will die an American citizen and a patriot. I believe in that, so should you. So that lady said, "I am Hamas." It was recorded, edited, presented to the world. "Oh, look at these terrorists. They are all over Columbia University." Even though the protest, there's a lot of Americans there, there are white kids there, people who feel the pain, people who go to church, people who pray to Mother Mary and Jesus Christ. Because women are not sexual objects. You don't look at every woman waist down. I hate to use these words, but I have to. Because communication should be communicated in the way it was meant. You do not target women as sexual objects. And that is exactly what is being done by IDF, the so-called Israeli army. I understand that things go wrong when cities are invaded and captured, but not 15,000 plus rapes. How do you justify that? How do you sleep at night, Mr. Netanyahu? How do you sleep at night, all the members of IDF? How do you go back and look at your mothers and daughters and sisters and wives and children? How? I have sinned personally, but God forgives us. I believe this to be my calling. I will continue to contribute whatever I can through my words of peace. I've written 3 books. Angels are crying. Because where the 50 nations stand today of Islamic faith, if there are angels, they should be looking down on us and crying. We, the followers of Prophet Muhammad, a simple man with no education, an honest man with no history of violence, we follow him. We follow our Lord, and we do not practice the faith that our names, most of us are called Muhammad. Some prefer to be called Mo. It's a shame what we have become. I know I keep going back and forth. So talking about the Hamas, do we even know what Hamas is and how it came into being? Do you know Jesse Waters? Does anyone know at CNN? I'm sure Manu Raju as well as Fareed Zakaria, they know, or Chris Wallace, or the lady reporters. The Hamas came into being when a settler, a Jewish settler, a racist guy, ran his car over Palestinian women, men, and children. That started the Intifada. That started PLO and Hamas. Hamas are Palestinians. They're 2 million plus and counting. And taking out 40,000 is not going to make much difference because life goes on. They will grow back. There are women, children, they have doctors, engineers, advocates, lawyers, a normal way of life. They are not, all of them are not terrorists. We don't even call the Afghani people terrorists. But it seems like, as I said the other day in episode 1 and 2, it doesn't matter. The Muslims are like a flock of sheep. The 2.3 billion, which in the next 25 years will probably be 6 or 7 billion. It doesn't matter because there is no protest coming from another channel or another side. Unfortunately, I am not in a position of wealth, but a lot of countries of Islamic faith, so-called Islamic faith, have trillions, hundreds of trillions of dollars. Buy a channel, a mainstream channel. Not Al Jazeera, which is not an American channel, but an American channel. And at least on a daily basis, 24/7, project the right side of faith. Not only Islam, but what goes around in this world. I know there is a saying, what goes around comes around. That is not happening anymore. It might come around after a few hundred years, but there is no instant coffee. There is no instant justice. We need to recreate our line of action. When I say we, I'm talking about Muslims. We need to recreate that. That is not going to happen by a protest in Colombia or taking over of a building and fighting with the police, tear gas, water cannons. That's not how it should be done. Go back to the drawing board. March with a placard saying we will remember in November 2024. Do the same thing in November 2028, 2032, 2036, 2040. Concentrate on your studies. Become something. Become an attorney. Become a businessman. If you have 1 gas station, try to make it 4 because money goes a long way. So become something in life. Assalamu alaikum.